I want to start out today just saying I am a United Methodist, like many of you. And I thought Bishop McKee last night provided us an important reminder about who we are as United Methodists. I had to look up this morning the role of the bishop. And one of the roles of United Methodist bishop is to be a prophetic voice for justice in a suffering and conflicted world through the tradition of social holiness. Does anybody think right now that we might be in the midst of a suffering and conflicted world? I certainly do, and I was grateful for Bishop McKee last night reminding us of who we are as United Methodists. In his closing benediction, he reminded us or challenged us to speak truth and begin the undertaking of justice. And that was after he reminded us of our social creed. And y'all, I'll just say, right? Like, I've been a United Methodist my entire life. My grandmother was a United Methodist woman. My mom was a United Methodist woman. I hope one day my daughter will be a United Methodist woman. And one of the reasons that I am a proud United Methodist is because we have this history of social action. We have things like the social principles that challenge us, things like the social creed that we can say together and commit ourselves to action today and in the future. And that creed last night ended with these words: "Today is the day God brings good news to the poor, proclaims release to the captives, gives sight to the blind, and sets the oppressed free. And so shall we." And Bishop McKee reminded us that the two phrases that are said over and over again in that creed are "today is the day," and "so shall we." Today is the day, and so shall we. And so as we have this conversation together today, my hope is that you'll think about the things that you can do after this event ends to bring about change for oppressed peoples, for our communities, and to make that commitment today to do something that brings about that change. I always, my go-to scripture is from Matthew 25. And when we look around and see the world today, we recognize that we still have hungry people in our communities today. And so we have work to do. We have thirsty people in our communities today. And so we have work to do. We have sick people in our communities today. And we have work to do. We have prisoners in our communities. I live in Huntsville, so for sure we do. And so we have work to do today. We have systemic racism. We have discrimination against women, against the LGBTQIA community. We have a climate in crisis. We have voting rights in need of protection. And we as people of faith are called to respond what day? Today. And so with history as our guide, we know that United Methodist women are up for the challenge to address these needs that are in front of us. And so my hope is that today, United Methodist Women of Texas will make that commitment once again to do the work necessary to bring about change for our communities, for hurting people, for the oppressed, for the captives, for the poor, and that today we make that commitment to do something about it. And Texas Impact is your partner to do just that. Texas Impact's role is to equip you to put your faith in action, to make your communities and make the world look more like Dr. King's beloved community. In this session, we're going to talk about some of the tools and resources that will help equip you and to help equip your congregation to do just that. Because I don't want to brag, I don't want to demean Josh or any of the speakers that are coming later, but these are probably the most important words that you're going to hear today. Democracy is not a spectator sport. And there's probably some famous person who said that. I don't want to steal their language, so somebody should look up that line and give credit to the appropriate person in the chat. But democracy is not a spectator sport. It's not entertainment that we consume by watching cable news. It's not something we consume by coming to United Methodist Women's legislative event or even Texas Impact's Weekly Witness podcast and then assume that we're good. Assume that we're good because we have formed an opinion by consuming this news. We are called to take the information that we receive and then engage our congregations, our communities, and the world, especially our elected officials. Or else all of this work, all of this programming, all of this is worthless if we don't actually use the information and engage it in our communities in the world. But engaging it ourselves is only half the work. We have over 400 people on our rapid response team, and Josh has talked about some of the ways in which those folks have made a difference in public policy here in the state of Texas. My guess is the rapid response team will make over 10,000 telephone calls during the course of the legislative session, and that's going to be important work. But how much better would it be if those 400 plus people on the rapid response list went and found 10 friends in their own community to do the work with them? There are, I haven't seen the updated number. People keep registering for this event. I think it's over 500 people now who've registered for this event. That's great. All 500 of you, I trust, are going to go back to your communities and do something. How much more effective would you be if the 500 of you on this, as taking part in this program this week, went back and found 10 more friends in your local community to do this work with you? We have a responsibility to be evangelists for justice ministries. We have the responsibility to bring our congregations, our friends, our United Methodist Women's Circles, our networks into this work with us to try to change hearts and minds, to try to register voters, to try to meet with our legislators, to bring about the change that our communities demand. And we have to challenge ourselves to step out of our comfort zones. Texas needs us. Democracy needs us. Struggling and disenfranchised Texans need us. And last night when we read that creed, we said together that today is the day. That was last night, but we'll still count it today, right? So we'll say it again today. Today is the day to make those commitments. And so I want to go through some of the resources that Texas Impact has to offer before I get into specifically the legislative engagement groups. And I have a couple of friends on the call who will be joining us toward the end. So I want to make sure that, that Trish and Terry are still on standby after trading messages on Friday. But I want to talk through the history of how we got to where we are today from an engagement standpoint. In 2017, the legislative session that Josh mentioned, Texas Impact started out the session with our rapid response team. And we'd have an action alert on Mondays that we'd send out to let people know what to expect throughout the course of the week. And then we'd email our rapid response team as things changed, or if their legislator really needed to receive a telephone call in a hurry, if they were a key member on a committee that was hearing one of our priority bills. And in the midst of that session, one of our board members, Reverend Franz Schimmel, who's a Lutheran pastor, decided for a Lenten practice that he was going to drive to the Capitol every Monday to meet with his legislators, and encouraged us to invite some friends to join him. I guess Franz needed some friends too, like I do, I guess. And so we launched Clergy Mondays during that session and invited faith leaders from throughout Texas to come to the Capitol on Mondays to receive a quick briefing and then go meet with our legislators. From Clergy Mondays, Weekly Witness was founded. And Weekly Witness, I want to see in the chat how many of y'all participate in Weekly Witness. Weekly Witness is, Sarah Cruz is moderating the chat. She's going to love me. Hey, Sarah. So Weekly Witness is our weekly podcast that brings faith leaders and other policy advocates together to help equip Texans of faith to understand what's happening in the legislative process and help them know what steps they can take to influence public policy. In the interim, we have speakers talk about a wide variety of topics, but during the session from 2017, 2019 on, we have structured Weekly Witness. So there was a topic of the week, so you could plan in advance. If you care about Medicaid expansion, we're going to talk specifically about Medicaid expansion on this date. So that's the first half of the program. The second half of the program is Josh Houston, who you have all grown to know and love, who provides us with a weekly action alert and a legislative update for the week in the second half of the program. This year, we've added a new treat. We have a weekly word from a Texas faith leader that provides a theological context at the beginning, some framing for the conversation at the beginning. So in 2019, we started Weekly Witness live at the First United Methodist Church of Austin Chapel. Folks would come in, they'd receive that information, and they'd walk across the street to the Capitol and make visits in the afternoon. Obviously, this legislative session, things are different. We are still offering Weekly Witness live, but it's on Zoom. I'll provide a link soon, or maybe Sarah can in the chat, where you can register to join us every Monday at noon to receive that information live, receive your action alert, and then start making your telephone calls Monday afternoon. I see many of you watch Weekly Witness. It is available on Apple Podcasts. It's available on YouTube. It's available on Facebook Live or any podcast source. Just go to wherever you find your podcast, type in Texas Impact Weekly Witness, or you can go to our website and find it there. So Weekly Witness is important. We hope that you'll do that. The rapid response team is important. We hope that you will do that. So I want to commend both of those to you and ask for you to go ahead and sign up. Can we all agree to do that? I'm looking at the chat. I'll wait. I'm just kidding. But starting this session, we want to ask something more of you. We're asking you to be a part of a legislative engagement group. And to help me explain why this is important, I want to play a quick clip, which is hard to say, quick clip, from our Weekly Witness episode last week. This clip features former 5-term Republican State Representative Sarah Davis from Houston, and was part of a conversation about Medicaid expansion. But this clip, I think, speaks to why legislative engagement groups are important. And this video is about 5 minutes. What advice can you give them about concrete steps that they can take during this legislative session to advance the cause?
So the first thing everyone needs to know is the first 60 days under a normal legislative session is dead time. We're not allowed constitutionally to take any votes. Committees aren't formed, or they are being formed, but they're not formed yet. Now we're in a different environment now with the pandemic. I think the House is out for a couple weeks, but this first 60 days is really when you need to be on the phone or on Zoom and contacting people, contacting your legislators, and don't forget about the Senate. Because I can't tell you how many conversations I have with constituents over the last 10 years wanting, to make change, and I'm willing to help, but then have totally ignored the other chamber. And so we've got to, I always say, don't forget about the Senate. In the last session, we made some interesting headway. We actually passed legislation that allowed women to stay enrolled in Medicaid for a full year after she gives birth, as opposed to 60 days. Now, that did not go through in the Senate, but I thought that was a great indication that we had some momentum, that there is growing understanding that we need to do more as a state. And I see a lot of focus on maternal mortality and morbidity. So I would say always advocate for Medicaid expansion. And I think you can familiarize yourself with some documents like the Episcopal Health Foundation has a great white paper about the economic impacts and how we can pay for it. I would read that and share that, and then share that with your legislators. Like I said, these first 60 days, they've got a lot of time on their hands. But even if you can't get to an actual elected, don't forget about the staff. The staff run the building. I mean, that's their full-time job. We are there for 140 days, and then, we go home. And our staff, or the staff, is there making sure that things run. And I can't tell you how important developing relationships with the staff is, because they a lot of times help drive the policy decisions that are being made by the particular elected official. I mean, I may have an idea like, I want to increase funding for substance abuse in this state. But, I will have a staff do research and say, hey, there's only 3 places that take, pregnant women and women with children, and that's the #1 reason why children are removed is substance abuse. Oh, so then let's focus resources on there. That wasn't my idea. That was staff working and working with advocates. So I say, don't discount the staff. In fact, sometimes they're way more important than the elected officials. But I also appreciate when someone says, we're going to have a meeting or a Zoom, and I receive a one-page, prep of what we're going to talk about, so that I can get my mind ready to engage in the conversation. And so you want to think about no more than one page, but I always think providing some initial information is very helpful, and always follow up. Because I usually would say I have to hear something and read something 3 times before it sticks. And so, you want to be persistent, but also what I have found to be effective is you're going to approach a member and you're going to ask them to support something like Medicaid expansion or allowing women to stay on the rolls of Medicaid for 12 months. Maybe take a look at some of their priorities and see if there are ways that you can offer to help them with their priorities. Can you write a letter, or can you get a group of people, to show support? So try and find a way to make yourself, useful to the office, so that you're not just there with an ask, but you're also there with some help. I would say that's a good strategy.
And we talk about that a lot, right? The relationship is actually important. You can't just make a telephone call and ask somebody to do something. That has to be a two-way street. So what did y'all hear there? I'm looking at the chat. I'm not waiting for you to speak. I know better than that. All right. What I heard there is that your elected officials want to hear from you. They want to build a relationship with you. Yeah, you're right. You're right in the chat there. It is vitally important that you build a relationship with the staff, and that it is a two-way street, right? That you need to build that relationship, because it's great to make 10,000 telephone calls, but it's probably more effective if you're talking with somebody that knows that you are an active and engaged part of their community, that you've met with, that you've talked about the food pantry that you serve with, that you've helped them better understand their community. They want you to bring your experiences and your resources to that two-way conversation. And in order to do that, we have created the Legislative Engagement Group program. And y'all, let's have a quick honesty check here. Let's be clear, because I hear some of your anxiety right now through the computer. Some of us are nervous about meeting with legislators. Some of y'all are thinking, hey, Scott, I'll make a telephone call, but I am not building a relationship with my representative or their staff. I hear you. I feel y'all, because I sometimes think the same thing. But we have to leave this event, to go back to the beginning of this conversation, right? Bishop McKee challenged us to make today the day where we make justice happen. And so I'm going to challenge you today to hold ourselves accountable for the important work that has to take place over the course of the coming weeks. And so the legislative engagement groups were created with 2 purposes in mind. First, we want to form an accountable group of people in each Texas House district that will be accountable to each other, to make sure that we're holding each other accountable, to meet with our legislators and to do this work. But more than accountability, right? Like, it's way more fun to do advocacy as a group, right? I know that y'all are going to make the telephone calls when I ask you to do so. But how much more fun would it be if you were able to connect with other people in your legislative district? I think this is especially important in more rural parts of the state, right? Because in many of our churches, we might not have a social justice ministry at our church, and there might be a couple of us who are interested in this kind of work. But guess what? At another church in town or other place in your community, there are other sets of 2 or 3 people who are interested in that. So the legislative engagement groups are designed to help connect those people from various different congregations, from various different backgrounds, to do this work together and hold each other accountable. The second purpose of the legislative engagement groups is to build a relationship with your district office, right? And so one of our first assignments for the legislative engagement groups was to bring cookies or baked goods to the legislative office, just to let them know that you're there and to tell them about your congregation and the ministries that you're a part of. This is a year-round process of building a relationship with both your legislator and the district office so they know that you are a valuable member of your community. So when you approach them during the legislative session, or when you come back to United Methodist Women's legislative event next year in 2 years and we're able to make capital visits, they'll remember you from the conversations you've had back home. And to equip that work, Texas Impact provides resources to legislative engagement group members. During the interim, we were doing a monthly webinar where we provide information and resources for folks to take to their legislative offices to have those meetings for their monthly homework assignment. During session, Josh and I are meeting with legislative engagement group members for a quick check-in after weekly witness every Monday afternoon to tell them information about their legislator and how to best approach them and kind of some cool tips of the trade. So we hope that you will sign up to be a part of a legislative engagement group. But the most important thing is to sign up and then do what? Looking at the chat. To find some friends to do it with you, right? To be an evangelist for the cause of justice. And so we hope that you'll consider signing up. We'll be sharing this information in follow-up emails. And we also hope that you'll invite some friends to join you. There you go. I'm seeing some friends posts coming now. And so now I want to give a little chance for some firsthand testimony from two of your United Methodist women who have been doing some incredible work with their legislative engagement groups as I promote them to panelists. Hopefully they're not surprised right now. Hey, Terry. Hey, Trish. Hey, did I get anything wrong there? I'm not leading anybody astray, am I?
Good morning.
Good morning. That sound okay to y'all?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not going to ask you about your feelings because I got a negative response when I asked Josh about that recently. But Terry, let's start with you. So one of the goals of the legislative engagement groups is to bring people together for mutual accountability. And when I asked you if you'd talk about that a little bit, you actually gave me a cool anecdote. So you want to talk some about that and how it's worked for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Terry Purdy. I'm here in Austin, Texas. I go to FUMC Austin, and I'm a member of our UMW unit. And I'm also the chair of our church's Mercy and Justice Committee. So obviously a lot of this was kind of just pointing neon signs at clearly something that I should have been doing all along. But definitely my story about joining a leg is that 2 years ago, I attended my first UMW legislative event. And out of that event 2 years ago, I met some of the people from my district, Betsy Singleton and Kathy Herzog, who have long been members of UMW and have long been, active in the advocacy field. So of course it was no surprise last spring, maybe last winter, that Kathy pinged me and said, hey, and I said, hey, and she said, I am in an engagement group that meets with Rep. Zwiener every month. Are you in? I think that was basically what she said.
Sounds like Kathy.
And how can I turn down such a compelling description of something that that I knew? But the great thing was UMW is what really connected me to people who I knew were going to be like-minded, and people that I had already a personal connection with through faith, as well as people who I knew to be my neighbors. I know Kathy lives just down the road from me, and who I had already gone on a legislative visit with through the UMW visit day. So it was really easy to jump right in. It was great to meet other people from our district who were through our interfaith connections. And I can say it's been a huge help to feel more connected to our legislator and to her staff's office. We've been pretty on the ball with keeping up with our monthly meetings. Obviously during the election, we kind of gave them some breathing space. And, but it's also been really fantastic for us to go to the monthly webinars to learn about the priorities and just educate ourselves and just to be able to have each other to talk to. We also meet separately from our legislator once a month to just kind of as a work group to assign tasks, to gather information, to see if anybody's recruited anybody else. So it's just really been a fantastic experience for me. And it has really taken the edge off of the intimidating part of doing a legislator visit. I think also that just that accountability of knowing that there's a couple people out there who are keeping us engaged. And then again, just the connection to like-minded people and to feel that we're not alone in this really has helped. I wanted to just say a couple words too about my increased civic engagement since joining that group. I have really found that I guess I always just thought somebody else was going to do it, you know, that there's always somebody else that is going to do the visits, it's going to go talk to people. And the more that I found out, the more I talked to people, the more I realized that there are a lot of people who, or there's a lot of openings and opportunities to just really get more involved. And again, like I said, I've always thought somebody else would do it, but, and so when an opportunity came up recently for me to run for our water district board, which is a weird position. It's a state political subdivision, and it is in fact an elected office, but very, very specific to my 400 neighbors. I took the opportunity to step up, and I am now officially on a board of directors for a water district, which is small beans, but it is still a place where I can continue to further our causes especially towards climate justice, environmental sustainability. And I would honestly say that without Texas Impact and without the legislative engagement groups, I probably would have just let that one go and say somebody else is going to do it. But somebody else can be us. And I think that the time is now, like you said, there's urgency around it. And I really encourage everybody to just get involved whatever level that they can.
I join everybody in the chat with thanking you for that. That was amazing, Terry. Thank you so much. And I know you've had some amazing visits with your representatives, but Trish Merrill and her legislative engagement group have had many meetings with their representative. And so, Trish, can you talk to us some about how that process has gone and why that's so important?
Good morning. First of all, I want to say a big shout out to Texas Impact. I mean, part of what makes this so doable and not scary is it's a step-by-step process. And from the very beginning, we had the support and help from Texas Impact. I was first going to have a House meeting for my representative, and I reached out to Scott and I said, where are the other Texas Impact members in District 47, with Vicki Goodwin's district? And so he sent me names, and then from there I invited people to the first meeting. And at the first meeting, we did introductions, and our representative wanted to know what we were interested in and what we could support. And it was just very interactive, and that set us off in a very positive way. She also put everybody on email lists and on alert lists. And so from then on, whenever she had a Zoom meeting of any kind, all of us got invited. But we've had 3 meetings, and before and after each meeting, we were instructed or given possibilities by Texas Impact of what to do and what to ask for. The second meeting we did had to do with revenue. And so we were encouraged to bring some information to her about that. So we took the Every Texan 1-pager to her, and she really appreciated that, and then talked to us about what she expected in terms of revenue possibilities. And she had some different ideas than Every Texan did. There are about 7 of us on our leg, and actually 4 or 5 of us are a little more active than the others, but I think it's important to keep everybody involved because there's always a little something to do that may not be quite as intimidating. This last session we had with her was in December, and it was all about kind of, how could we support her? This is a tough time. What's it going to look like in the Capitol? And is your staff doing okay? Or is there any way that we can support in any way through our prayers or whatever? And so I think we've built a really good relationship with her. We were able to find out, we've met all of her staff and we have their cell numbers. So we are ready for the legislative session. She's probably an exceptional representative in that she really wants the same things we want in terms of interaction and positive things for Texans. So we're very fortunate that way.
Trish, Terry, that was incredible. Let me see in the chat, how many of you want to be like Trish and Terry when you grow up? All right. So here's the deal. Thank y'all for joining. I really appreciate the time. I'm going to spend save a couple minutes at the end for questions. So if you have those, please go ahead and post them in the Q&A section. But y'all, we are rolling out some new communications mechanisms for the legislative engagement group soon. And I held off on doing that because I hope that following this conversation today, we double the number of people currently signed up for legislative engagement groups. And we're going to be posting that link in the chat. I'm sure it's already in there a couple of times. But here are my 4 homework assignments for you today. We hope that you'll watch Weekly Witness. We hope you'll join join the rapid response team. But we really, really, really want you to consider joining a legislative engagement group so you can be connected with other advocates in your area and start this work for justice today. I like that comment. I wanted to be like Trish Merrill when I grew up my whole life. And now I'm seeing it was from somebody on our staff. I also want to be like Trish Merrill when I grow up. We have to start this work today. So sign up, but then bring this information back to your United Methodist women in your local area, or to your social media networks, or to your friends who might find this interesting.